Happy. Thank you once more. And floor for Demir, Professor Demir Hüseyin. You are welcome. Floor for you. Demir, Profesorius Hüseinas Demiras pristatys
Hüseyin Demir
temą pagalbos pabėgėliams organizacija. Jis yra iš Vokietijos,
bet turi he's from Germany, but he's lived in Turkey, and Turkey is notorious for the lack of democracy.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hüseyin Demir. I am an exiled law professor who is currently a political refugee in Germany. I'll be talking about hate speech used by the media and its impacts on targeted groups. While I am doing that, I will specifically focus on Turkish media and hate speech against a particular social group, namely Gülen movement, as an outstanding example of hate speech campaign, I am one of the victims of this campaign. But first let me explain what hate speech is, then the connection between hate speech and hate crime, then I'll give the examples. Despite its frequent usage, there is no consensus on a definition of hate speech. Some scholars stress the hurtful and vilifying character of hate speech, stating that any form of expression directed at objects of prejudice that perpetrators use to hurt and vilify its recipient is hate speech. Members of targeted groups are delegitimized, demonized, or portrayed as inferior in hate speech. It has also been drawn attention to the irrational, disapproving, hypercritical, unjustified, expressional characteristic of hate speech. Parek states that hate speech expresses, advocates, encourages, promotes, or incites hatred of a group of individuals distinguished by a particular feature or set of features. And when hate speech is permitted to be transmitted, it encourages a social climate in which particular groups are defamed and their discriminatory treatment is accepted as normal. The connection between hate speech and hate crime can be detected within a rhetorical stratagem of hate speech, having the following four characteristics. 1, to inflame the emotions of followers. 2nd, to denigrate the designated outclass. 3rd, to inflict permanent and irreparable harm to the opposition. And ultimately, 4th, concur. In this way, hate crime can be seen to follow hate speech. Rwanda and Yugoslavia serve as the most dramatic and well-known example of hate speech communicated through the media. The ability to successfully convey the politics of hate relates to a number of factors, including the media's role in instigating mass mobilizations. Nazi and fascist parties, for instance, took advantage of press laws, urbanization, and mass communication to agitate and attract followers. Likewise, Milosevic in Serbia and the Hutu extremists in Rwanda established ultra-nationalist networks and controlled important media outlets. Obviously, hate speech is important, especially when it's used in media, by the media. Discourse is the main interface between the social and cognitive dimensions of hatred. This is important because one of the main roles of discourse is the reproduction of social representations, such as knowledge, attitudes, ideologies, norms, and values. Discourse can therefore be said to play a fundamental role in provoking conflict as much as in establishing social peace. Furthermore, the way in which social problems are defined by news media strongly influences how the public and policymakers understand and act on an issue. The mass media are currently the most influential source of racist bias, prejudice, and racism. News, editorials, and opinion articles in the press are crucially involved in the formation of ethnic attitudes and ideologies. As a result, the media is often the primary vehicle by which the public learns, in a sense, about who is valued and who is not. Some believes that othering is an obligatory step in the process of identity construction, while the self is constructed by emphasizing the qualities that differ from the other. Both identities are constructed. Therefore, polarization and opposition are created by emphasizing the differences between us and them. By creating a discriminative differentiation in the identity hierarchy, the desired and undesired identity is clarified. By stressing the differences between us and them, members of the outgroup are denigrated, demonized, delegitimized, or depicted as inferior. Let's move on to hate speech in Turkish media. I'll give some examples and the impact of this hate speech. According to various research reports, the first 4 outgroups that are targeted and represented in a negative light in Turkish media are, respectively, the Gülen movement, Christians, Jews, and Kurds. I'll first analyze the approach in the Turkish media towards minorities. Minorities are described using a variety of words that have negative connotations and attributes. Furthermore, ethnic communities are frequently depicted as having undesirable characteristics. This situation is widely seen in news stories published by right, conservative, nationalist, Islamist newspapers. Some examples, quote, "Despite being Ottoman citizens, Armenians who dreamed of forming Armenia on Turkish land collaborated with enemy forces and stabbed Turkey in the back." Quote, "The Greeks, no race in the world has such lying, untrustworthy, unreliable people." These are all from the media. "The most ferocious enemy of Muslims are the Jews. Let me remind you that all gambling games were invented by Jews. Are you aware of how the Jews took you away from your Muslim faith and make you slaves?" Violence against ethnic minorities and other outsider groups never occurs in isolation, but it is legitimated and made more likely through a combination of social beliefs, customs, imagery, metaphors, and stereotypes that degrade and dehumanize the ethnic minority. Stigmatizing, blaming, stereotyping, and scapegoating are the main characteristic of Turkish media, and most of the time serve to inflame the emotions of followers, thereby increasing support for the government, especially for President Erdogan. Destructive ideologies and dehumanizing messages has become normal for followers of government exposed to hate speech on a regular basis through mass media. As it is argued that statements alleging the disloyalty of others can create mistrust against the stigmatized individual or group, and even incite irrational fear of the ostensibly subversive group within one's society. As the quotations show, non-Muslims and Muslim minorities such as Kurds or social movements such as Gülenists alike are accused of disloyalty, treachery, and of showing allegiance to other countries. To understand the behavior of Turkish media, one must realize that media control is a crucial step on Erdogan's path to becoming an authoritarian executive president with no check and balance. His takeover of the Turkish media aims to silence rising opposition and criticism. He has limited freedom of speech and the media in Turkey by taking over 90% of the media, while the government regulates and blocks the internet and social media. By doing so, he not only undermines democracy, but also limits the voters' ability to make free and informed decisions. Hate speech used against Gülen movement by Erdogan and Turkish media since the outbreak of corruption scandal in late 2013, which implicates some cabinet ministers and family members of President Erdogan, a new chapter has been opened in Turkey's history of hatred. Erdogan declared the investigations as an attempted coup against his government, despite solid evidence on the scheme. He declared all-out war on the Gülen movement, given its origins as a transnational religious civil society group inspired by Fethullah Gülen, a Muslim cleric now living in self-exile in the US, blaming them for plotting the corruption probes. Since then, the president's political rhetoric has increasingly targeted the movement. I quote, "They are grave robbers. They are body snatchers. They are characterized by lies, deceit, subterfuge, dissension, conspiracy, and slander. It is a treacherous terrorist organization. They have no morality. They have no decency. They have no love for the homeland, nation, or flag. What an impostor he is. They are slanderous. They are so lowly, so treacherous." This is a compilation of quotes from the insults and hate speech uttered by Erdogan against the movement. The unprecedented process of vilifying and demonizing the movement was hurriedly kicked off by Erdogan, who blatantly said, "Yes, it is a witch hunt, and we are the ones who are conducting it." Unsurprisingly, such harsh expressions from Erdogan found immediate support from the media. In some cases, the media was literally obliged to adopt the offensive language against the Gülen movement. News items slandering the Gülen movement have become a daily routine for part of Turkish press. The media reported that the movement had a long list of immoral and illegal activities. Many columnists adopted an aggressive tone that closely resembled that of the government in the fight against the movement, and directed a variety of insults and accusations towards them. To begin with, for some, the Gülen movement is just a puppet of international actors, although the answer to the question of who these international actors are varies from one journalist to another. Columnists claim that a variety of entities, the Vatican, the United States, the European Union, Israel, Jewish lobbies, neocons, international Zionism, the ISIS, Mossad, MI5, the CIA, the FBI, the Moon Cult, the Freemasons, the Rockefeller family, and the Sephardi chief rabbis of Israel are either employers or partners of the Gülen movement. Members of the Gülen movement were declared to be pawnsters, sneaky, putschists, tape editors, rebelling against the Turkish state in the name of Israel, a foreign threat, a threat to national security, hashashins, bandits, snakes, parasitic ivy, and the people who altered the rules of Islam. The Gülen movement was equated with an illegal criminal organization, a gang, a junta, an intelligent organization. But the most creative by far was the claim that there was a resemblance between the Gülen movement and the aliens from the Matrix movies, even though the entire Matrix trilogy was all about machines and computers with not a single reference to aliens. Erdogan's severity took the form of outright demonization and vilification of the movement in the aftermath of the failed coup attempt in July 2016. Although he blamed the group for plotting the corruption probes and the coup attempt, Gülenists have explicitly denied their involvement in both efforts. In his address to the nation after 2016 coup attempt, the president depicted informing on Gülen supporters as a patriotic duty, encouraging citizens to become voluntary informants that spy on their co-workers, neighbors, relatives, and even family members. During this period, members of the movement had to leave Turkey due to ever-increasing demonization and seek asylum in Western countries. Those who could not leave have become targets of violent hate crimes. For example, inspired and motivated by the ongoing political hate rhetoric, a research assistant at Osman Gazi University killed 4 of his colleagues in the faculty in 2018 for being alleged Gülen members. The murder suspect had previously lodged complaints about 102 academics with FETÖ, which is a derogatory term used by the AKP government while referring to the movement, membership accusation, which led to their dismissal from academic position. And his first statement in police custody, he claimed to have felt no repentance for his act. This case has raised many questions about the devastating effect of political hate rhetoric and whether it fuels hate crimes among the Turkish populace. As a result, thousands of people had to leave the country for their own safety. Almost 150,000 were dismissed from the civil service without any effective judicial or administrative probe, and more than 650,000 people have been investigated with the accusation of being member of Gülen movement, which Erdogan government defines as terrorist organization. There were over 150,000 cases of detention in which hundreds of torture complaints were made by the UN and other credible non-governmental organizations. And over 100 people died under suspicious circumstances. The gross insults and hate speech frequently employed by the media and Erdogan do not target the Hizmet movement alone. Of course, all individuals, social groups, and even countries perceived by the president as being critical of him have had their share of insults. The research done by Stockholm Freedom of Center found that Erdogan has uttered 240 different derogatory phrases that amount to hate speech against the movement in a little over 3 years. Given the fact that each derogatory phrase and instance of hate speech has been voiced by the president dozens and even hundreds of times in various public speeches, the horrendous nature of Erdogan's onslaught against the movement is worse than it appears at first glance. Considering further, the media outlets directly or indirectly controlled by Erdogan frequently and pervasively parroted the same rhetoric. The intensity of insult and hate speech targeting the movement can be better understood. As an example of how Erdogan's insults and hate speech have dominated the media scene in Turkey, a simple search for the derogatory phrase FETÖ, an acronym for the Gülenist terrorist organization frequently used by Erdogan and pro-Erdogan media networks, on Google produced more than 62 million results on May 18, 2017. It would be unreasonable to conclude that such widely disseminated expressions by one of the most eminent figures in the history of Turkish politics would have no impact on society. The case of the Gülen movement in Turkey has not yet turned into genocide observed in Rwanda. However, the ongoing hate rhetoric used by President Erdogan and other top government officials, as well as a rise in the prevalence of hate crimes against the group, have reached a critical point in recent years. I would like to summarize a study which is very important to understand hate speech against the movement in this context. According to this study, the political rhetoric used against the movement readied members of the dominant groups in Turkey to commit or condone acts of violence. Media's use of hate speech effectively divided the public into us versus them, or good versus evil, which evoked and exploited the fears of Gülenists. President's presence in Turkey has been so powerful that people have even turned against their own families and friends, including their own children, siblings, and other relatives in solidarity with the president. Another important finding addresses how President Erdogan and his media have used religious rhetoric to mobilize their supporters. As shown, many perpetrators approved and embraced Erdogan's hate speech and even used them against movement members for a number of reasons. First, Erdogan appealed religious sources to justify and strengthen his position. Second, he has been very effective in mobilizing the masses, which have supported him politically throughout his tenure as leader of the party and as Turkey's president. In an analysis of hate crimes, it is said that religious fanaticism that causes individuals to develop extreme worldviews may motivate them to perpetrate hate crimes against outgroups. Religiosity has become one of the identity discourses governments use to do differences and deem others as deviant, dangerous, and inferior. In this sense, Erdogan's supporters have recognized his hateful rhetoric was a call to action against the others, such as Gülenists, and have become willing to comply by committing willful acts of violence. As shown, how many times? I'm about to finish. Hate crimes incited by politically charged hate speech have reached a dangerous level, such as that victims have been forced to leave their country or otherwise distance themselves from society. Okay, I'll try to use my time as asked, and I'll come to conclusion. But I have the paper which I presented now. Here, I'll leave them there. If you are interested, you can take one. In this presentation, I have demonstrated that explicit hate speech is common in Turkish media, regardless of ideological or political position, and that it disrupts social peace. Media uses discourse strategies that represent minorities and social groups as disloyal citizens and traitors, in particular, constructed as the evil and historic enemy. Through this discourse, and with the help of the media, social polarization is justified and normalized. Conducting research on the issue can provide data that helps to change the status quo. Such research can also provide support to citizens who are targeted by hate speech. Moreover, showing the destructive effect of hate speech on social peace can help raise awareness of the issue and gain the support required to confront and fight against it on a social level. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. We understand that it's a very sensitive topic, and I recommend for you who are interested, take an article. Thank you, Professor, once more.